And today we're going to walk through some of the steps that we are taking to reproduce an 18th century game board. This is similar to the Game of the Goose that we have listed on our website now, but this one is called the Game of the Owl. So I'm going to open this up here. Today we're working with Photoshop, and what's kind of neat about the technology is that we can take the image that was inputted into the British Museum. That was a scan, and we can upload it onto our screen here and start fixing the parts that have deteriorated over time or was just not a really good scan. So we're going to start here in the center. I've been working on this for a few days, and we're going to start here in the center. So this is called the new Game of the Owl, and this was a dice game that really the board itself was a set of instructions / scorecard. So there weren't any rules to this game outside of what's posted on the physical game. So what would happen is if you rolled a 2, a 3, and a 1, you would have to put in 12 bets or counters into the center here of the game board. But today we're working on just kind of showing you how we take the time to find these originals and clean them up so we can reproduce them. Today we're using a iPad Pro with an iPad Pencil, or an Apple Pencil. And I'm right now just taking the pencil and shading in the areas that need to be black. So far, probably got about 16, 18 hours into this one image here. So everything was in pretty rough shape. We had missing lines throughout, like this section here. These lines were missing, and over here on the side. Get back here to our circle. So it's a long, tedious time going back and forth, shading in the areas that need to be shaded in, cleaning up any areas that have either been lost over time or potentially even on the original strike of this game. Could have been missed on that print. So these games were printed commercially and were found at shops throughout Europe and England, specifically in England. as well as Germany. This game was, and France. Both Germany and France, this game was really popular in the 18th century and 17th century. Came over here to the States around that similar time, and was a popular board game along with the Game of the Goose and many other printed game boards. And so you would just go to the local print shop and pick up these game boards. So if you're just joining us here, we're working on reproducing an 18th century game. It's called Game of the Goose, or New Game of the Goose, depending on the translation. It's a sheet to aid you in a gambling dice game. Grew and found commercially at your local print shops. Today we are taking an original scan from an original game board, and we're cleaning it up and making it look new. So we're not changing the historical parts of the game, we're just cleaning up what has been lost. So similar to like photography restoration. iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil here. There are lots of these little circles, or wedges I guess you could say, in the shape of this circle, and we've worked on fixing each one of those. We'll take a break from the circles here and go to some of these shapes. So the shapes and the images inside of these square landing areas or areas that show you whether you're going to put or take into the game depict 18th century images. Like here, this is a pair of spectacles. So we can see from either the pixelation of the scan or potentially some loss. We lost just a little bit here on the bottom of that frame, and then we have some digital artifact over here. We're going to clean this up. Here's another one. It almost looks like this area right here is part of that square, but it's actually needs to be erased. Clean that up. We can show that square underneath, as well as some of this in here. Got that scan. So it can be a struggle to identify whether it's a element of a piece or a smudge from the print, from the strike, or if it's a bad part of the image. So just gonna have to take a little bit of licensing, artistic licensing, to determine what and sometimes I'm thankful to have the undo button. So like there, did not quite work like I wanted, so we can come out and fix that line a little more. So lots of different images here where we have what would be probably some type of either fishing hook or potentially a hanging spit. Over here looks like what would be maybe a salamander, which is this instrument here would be placed into a fire. So an iron implement be placed into a bed of coals or in a fire and would have been used as a cooking and heating implement. Pair of looks like ember tongs here. Maybe some type of, I don't know if that's a goat or, no, not a goat. See, that'd be more like a dog there. Some type of bag. And we're coming back around here to those spectacles. All right, so what I've learned on doing these is best to kind of just move around and find things. If you stick to one thing for so long, you'll start losing your mind. So I'm going to come here and start erasing a little bit of, again, I refer to artifact. It's a digital process, so it's not really, I guess, a scientific or historic term, but it's a term here in the 21st century world. And a lot of times it's either from pixelation scans, pixelation from poor scans, or translations of what it's saved. And what I'm looking for is right here. It's kind of hard to see if I can maybe draw some lines, but you can see how that little gray area, little gray box inside the white box, that's what we want to actually get rid of. That's that artifact. And what happens is when we reproduce those, when we print those, that gets put onto the sheet, and those didn't actually exist. So everything in printing is done by squares. So right now, this zoom in here, I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but this right now we're about 25,000%. So we're pretty far in there. I'll show you what it looks like at 100%. So that's 100%, about 100% right there. So you don't start to you lose those square lines, but we want to go down as far as we can to really clean those up. To get back my eraser tool here and start just cleaning up those erasers. Now, on the eraser tool, what I'm using, this little button here, is giving it kind of a feathered effect. So it's a harsh line. And if I come in really close, you can see if I were to erase, it makes the center part white with the background, but then on the edges goes to gray and then to black. And that makes that where it's not a harsh cut. I'm going to undo that because we don't want that to actually be there. And then just go back into our erasing job here. Now, one thing I don't do, if you see here in the center of the screen where these lines are, the left side has that wavy look to it where the right side is very straight. These are hand drawn and then cut when they were being printed. So not everything was precise. Now, when we zoom out, you may consider, well, maybe that was just an ink blotch. So for something like this, we may try to clean up just a little bit here on the inside and on the outside. But I'm not going to redraw that line. So that little bit of difference, I think, keeps the historical integrity of the image and what we're doing, but doesn't destroy the line that was there. And I lost my place, so I guess we'll find somewhere new to go. So let's see, come over here. Oh, here we go. We kind of a post-Halloween. This is a nice depiction of a spider. And if you on the side, we can see quite a bit of that artifact again inside of that space. Just going everywhere. I'm going to increase my brush size because there's quite a bit. So now I've got to decrease that brush size because that 17 is a little bit big. I've been working with between 8 and 12 on that brush size. And as you can see, you can just easily erase and undo. And we spend a lot of time undoing. The eraser is hard to see because you're kind of just going in blind. But there is quite a bit of work involved in this. Zoom in here a little closer. So this shows great detail of those squares and how just a little bit of, you can start to clean that up. This pencil is actually, pencil / iPad itself is pressure sensitive, which is nice because we can determine how much of the stroke we actually want to be there or not. So I changed my brushes here and I'm back to the pen and filling in those spots of the web. But we may have added too much. Yeah, so we're going to come in here again. Help pull that through. So it probably would be a little time or a little faster if we did it in one square at a time and just completely finished it. Frankly, my mind just can't stay focused on that square for so long because you can spend multi-hours just in one square depending on what you're doing. So I kind of have like a squirrel moment here and we'll go to the next square if I see something, or like right here, as I have that eraser tool already up, I notice there's some cleanup that needs to happen over here on these lines. And we're into the next one. Looks like a shovel here. This would be a take 5. So if you rolled a 3, and a 6 on this this space right here, you would take 5 tokens out of the pot for that roll. Speaking of 5, notice here that, see, if we go to another 5, you can see how that top of the 5 extends further past the curve of that bottom part of the 5. And so recognize that this lost that. So again, we don't want it to be taking away from the original, but this is probably just didn't get striked as heavy or inked as heavy. And they were doing hundreds, if not thousands, of strikes on these game boards, and these were mass produced. So not changing what the board is, but hopefully improving kind of what it was, fixing a mistake that maybe was a 200 mistake. Let's check, spend some time here and check some of the other text. Here's another part of that 5, so it's another 5 there we see. So it looks like actually we've lost our dot in between the P and the 1. The P was for the put, and so we're going to add a little dot right back in there. And we're going to also increase the 1 by the 1. Make that look. So on these games here, whenever we're looking for to reproduce like with our playing cards or the games, we spend a lot of time looking at museums and their collections and finding what games they have. And then we even look at the different prints that are in the 18th century, different pieces of artwork, and see what games are being depicted. Like there's a famous print. We'll add the comments, but they're playing the game of the goose, and so you can see that they're playing that game. Now there's lots of copies of this game called the Game of the Owl. So far I don't think I've been able to find a print of them playing the game of the goose, or this particular, I should say, this particular version, but there are multiple different prints where we're playing different games. So as you see, you kind of jump around here and find different areas that we can help bring these back to life. This P reminds me of this section up here. So when we first started working on this section here, what was displayed was something close to this. And so I had just been racking my mind on what in the world would that be. Well, I knew the game specifically has a couple different rules where if it's a 6, 6, and a 1, or a 6, 6, and 6, that you take all of what's in the pot. And then if it was a 6, 6, or 6, 6, and 1, so 13 is what you would roll, you would take nothing. So you didn't have to take or put anything into the pot. And so I really was struggling with what this was trying to say. And it wasn't until I just had to notice that on that original there was maybe a line like this when I zoomed in closer, and I thought, that's an R, and then the R-I-E-N in French translates loosely to nothing. So literally the word nothing. And so this was to take nothing, to do nothing. And so that was a fun little discovery. And it took looking at different rules and different copies to understand what we're doing. We've actually seen some reproduction games where they incorrectly reproduced text on a game board because they didn't potentially understand what it was saying, or it was an ink blot. One of the common ones is the numbers or the letter. It's an I or a 1. We've seen that a couple times. Here's a 2 we can work on. So I'm going to undo those. And I'm going to go to a little bit bigger of a brush. So on the eraser, we've been kind of in that 8 to 12 range, and I've been close to that on the brush. So I'm going to go back to that 8. It's too heavy on that side, so we'll bring that in. Not liking the way that's looking here, so we're going to just use our eraser tool and go back. So let's take a look at that 2 compared to this 2, and that's pretty bad. So we're gonna so in this case they're wasn't much to go off of. So we're kind of recreating what should. Still not quite right. So one of the things we can do is we can actually lasso this. We'll see if it'll let us. This part is a little trickier on the iPad compared to if you were working on a desktop. You would want to just copy this. Well, we're learning here. Let's see how we can do this. We may just have to fight this battle another day. But right beside there, we know that's a P, and we can fix that P pretty easy. Sometimes it's easier to go a little heavier and then come in and erase the sections that you don't need. So on that bottom part of the two, I can see that just needs a little bit of help right there. Much better. All right, let's go in and just do a little bit of line work. We're going to clean up a little bit of these lines here. There's a good section we can work on. So looking at multiple copies of these prints, I've never found one where the lines were all faded in amongst each copy, meaning those lines are because there was a strike error or ink error. And so cleaning that up a little bit helps show what a game board should have looked like. There's a good section here. And there wasn't, when they were striking these on the games, there was not two different colors of ink. And you can see closely how we have multiple different shades. When we print these, you won't see that because we'll use a monochrome print, but only using the black. So if it's lighter, it's going to appear like the print or the strike isn't as heavy in that certain area versus a different color. And you can even see that with the different pressures that I'm using here. You can fade it off. So it's a really cool tool to be able to use this. You can get lost in this world and just sit and draw with your pencil. Edit this game board, or it's satisfying for sure. So this was a very popular game that would have been found in taverns, would have been played at home, would have been played any place in public that they wanted to. This was it was really easy because it was just a sheet of paper, roughly typically 15 or 18 inches square for this particular game. Our game of Goose is, I think, a 12 by 15, 12 by 18 sheet. This one is a square board, more square, so it's about 15 by 16, I believe. Rectangular because of this top header section. Go back to where we were. I kind of got a little bit off on the side line here, so we're gonna, rather than undo all that, we'll just clean this up with a little eraser where we came off. Well, I'm going to keep working on this probably for the next, I don't know, probably still have about 5-6 hours left in this, but we're going to wrap up the video for the day. Hope you guys enjoyed watching us use 21st century technology to reproduce an 18th century game board. This was a very popular game, a very inexpensive game, because it only needed a pair of dice and whatever counter you wanted to use to keep track of your bets. There were no markers for this game. There were no specific game tokens. Just actually I said 3 dice, not a pair of dice. But you just use 3 normal 6-sided dice and you could play this game. So we're hoping to have this game ready for purchase in a few sale, and details on that will be coming in the next couple weeks as well. We do have the goose available online now, and we went through the very same process on reproducing that. But again, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed this little game. This is a demonstration of how we're editing our games and being able to reproduce something from the 21st century. And thank you guys very much for joining, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.